In the alternate universe, they see through all time. Yeah. For all time, always. Yeah. For all time, always is the name of this one. It's yeah. Loki episode 6. Yeah. So this is the season finale. In this one, the Lokis appear in a weird haunted mansions type castle. That's done to look better than haunted mansion, but it clearly is. And they face Black Jesus, the all-seeing guy. It's not called Black Jesus, but that's who it is. And then of course, Shubalava is in this movie. In the end, it's not spoilers. It's not somebody like Shubalava. So he's in there, yeah. And the Lokis try to kill him, and it doesn't work because he can anticipate everything they're going to do because it's written in this book of what they're doing. He's the timekeeper guy. He's the all-knowing guy, all-knowing, all-seeing. It's just omnipotent, basically the omnipotent guy. He's all omnipresent, omnipotent. He'd be omnipresent, actually, because that would be all everywhere. But it would also be omniscient. So, omnipotent, all-knowing, omnipresent would be everywhere. Yeah, omniscient. So yeah, the all-seeing guy knows what's going to happen before it happens, and the Lokis are basically stuck there. And meanwhile, back at the TVA, they find out where the girl, who I think is Tara Strong, is going back and forth, and they find out that her original self was actually a principal at a school in Ohio in the past, in 2018, who was probably dusted during the Thanos thing. So everybody's variant. They let out the other black lady. She escapes. And Mobius threatens the girl, her boss, the Tara Strong character, the judge, and the judge has turned off the device, so he can't zap her. He's going to, but he can't. She takes it and sends him away, and then meanwhile the other stuff is going on. There's not a lot of action in this episode. It's mostly them tricking back and forth between Black Jesus and them, who's either Jesus or the devil, probably more of a devil, wherever they are. He's more of a, I'm not sure. I'm not sure what he's supposed to be, because he's clearly a trickster like Loki. Maybe he's another Loki, and he's in charge of the TVA. But yeah, he's not really quasi-religious, though. It's more like the religion is a dogmatic ruse in this story, so they're not really a religion. It's sort of like, it's very, very much a Walt Disney thing, and very much the Wizard of Oz, very much that idea as well. The guy behind the curtain, Disney and the Wizard of Oz. Walt Disney was sort of, he was just dogmatic and pragmatic. He wasn't really, I don't think he was in any one religion, really. I don't think he was into that. Disneyland is clearly its own cult. The cult of Mickey Mouse, haha! Yes, haha! But yes, so we have this bizarre, like, a little bit of a fight in there. We have Loki fighting Sylvie, and then admitting they like each other, and him kissing her. They kiss, and then she pushes Loki. She gets a hold of his time travel device. I guess there's one of those time travel devices left. And she pushes Loki into it, and then she kills the Black Jesus guy. So that's the spoilers for the plot. But when she does, she pushes Loki into this universe where he's not a variant, and they don't know who he is. And that goes back to the other story of they filmed the coffee cup thing on the ground, and there's an analyst guy in there. But there's a part I missed. Earlier on, the two Loki and Sylvie, are confronted with the Tara Strong character also playing Little Clock. And she basically tells them there's a way out. There's a universe where you don't. Your variants could happen, and you could just live there because it's not part of the official timeline. It's sort of like with Captain America, went back to be with Agent Carter in a separate timeline that kind of went parallel, but not quite until later on when he could show up again. That's kind of what happened with that. So this is kind of like that a little bit, which they didn't explain in the movie. So here they try to explain that. The timelines are all being messed up, and because they've killed the Black Jesus guy or whatever he was, or some sort of omnipotent being at the end of time, then it branches all back to episode 2 or 3, when it caused the entire universe to start to unravel. So the universe is already unraveling. Episode 2, they just don't know it yet. They're seeing their own universe as not unraveling yet. Very Q-like, actually. This is a Disney version of Q and his adventures. Of course, Q would fall in love with himself. But of course he would. We kind of saw this on Voyager with Q and the Lady Q. But we always knew that all along that Q's one and only true love is Picard, and not the Lady Q. We always knew that because that one scene where they showed up in bed together in Perdition, and they were like, "Oh, this is as good for you as it was for me." Picard's all grossed out. He's like, "Oh." It's like, no, he was secretly excited. He's like, "Yeah, it was amazing." Well, they didn't want to go there because back then Rick Berman was kind of homophobic and didn't want to do anything like that. So all the early Star Treks, they even implied gay characters. They just didn't show them. Yeah, LaForge was supposed to be gay in the first season, but the lawyers and Berman and them were all like, no, we don't want to do that. Make him straight, girlfriend. And then Garrick and Bashir and Deep Space Nine, yeah, it's clearly that's where they were going. But no, make him straight. And then they tried to sneak it in with Bashir and O'Brien, but then they said, no, make him straight. They even addressed it in Sloane's mind in that one episode. It's like, no, Garrick and Bashir were totally making out. No, maybe he's bi. Space bi. Yes. Andrew Robinson didn't read the slash fiction. He just said he was going to. So that clip on the internet about that is wrong. He said he was going to in the clip, but they didn't show the slash fiction he read. He just said, "Oh, basically we're in love. It's canon in this one." Oh, that's basically all he said. So yeah, he was kidding, of course, but no more kidding than Xena was when she was with Kallista. Those two were married, really obviously, and Starscream and Megatron. Clearly, their love-hate relationship was more of a as old as Prime and Ironhide, possibly. Oh my! Not Hot Rod, because Hot Rod was technically their son. So. Technically, well, not technically. So we have Loki, and we have, in the case of Loki, he's basically the female version of him is a female, so he's technically bi. Although the Loki character from Norse mythology is into everything. The Loki character from Norse mythology changed himself into a horse and changed himself into a wolf so he could have sex with horses and wolves and have babies with them, because he could actually turn himself into a woman frequently. It was very, very much pansexual. That's where they get the idea of Pan from, Fawn and that other stuff. The Peter Pan and so on. All of that is connected to the imp character that runs through the woods and tricks people, a trickster imp. A Cupid, same idea, Cupid. Trickster imp running around with arrows, though. He had arrows, and he shoot people and make them fall in love, or else. Actually, the original 13th century Cupid, he was basically an asshole. He was running around like, "You must be in love now, thunk. If you art not, I shall pierceth thee with my arrows." Yes, but yes, also in Shakespeare, Puck from Midsummer Night's Dream is Loki. Pretty much, he can turn people into donkey heads and stuff. So yeah, and Q is basically Puck or Loki. Q is it's kind of the same idea. It's the same idea. If they hadn't done it, they should have. John Delancey should have played Puck in Midsummer Night's Dream somewhere on Broadway. That would have been awesome. Because it totally would have been like, okay, this typecasting. So the Loki story is like an odd thing he does get, at the end of the 6th episode. I think this is only like a 1-season arc. But, yeah, they don't recognize him because he's in the universe where the Black Jesus is the overlord of that universe, and the timekeepers aren't there down in the basement. The statue is there, and it's him. It's not them. They don't recognize him. It's a universe where he isn't there. He's part of the time thing. He's been transported into a variation of that universe where sideways universe. Yes, it does end like Lost, but not quite like Lost in that you're already using sideways time travel anyway. And it is kind of a cop out because they're basically saying, okay, nothing that happened before and the other 5 episodes really matters, except that he is no longer variant there, and the universe is all the multiverse. And how powerful was the omniscient, omnipresent guy if you let them kill him because he was old? See, in the 31st century, there were 3 of these Time Lords, and they got together from these 3 different dimensions. That's where they came from. They're very Doctor Who, but as somebody pointed out on the internet, not just me. Other people pointed this out. Very much like Doctor Who and Time Lords. But you figure the Doctor Who people that did that series for 25, 26 years, it's a similar time frame to Star Trek. And Star Wars, obviously I should say 50 years, 55, 56 years. Doctor Who is on a long time. There's been different iterations. Star Trek is almost 55. Doctor Who is almost 55. Star Wars is only 45, roughly. So, anyway, so it's 10 years younger, but more present. So Marvel Studios stuff, Marvel Comics has been around since at least the 30s and 40s, so way before that. In some form or another. DC as well. They were Detective Comics back then. So yeah, DC Detective Comics, Marvel. Yeah, and they traded off ideas. And so Doctor Who, if anything, was copying their idea of Time Lords and a guy and TARDIS and all that from Marvel and DC. So yeah, that's probably where they got it. Why not? Just like, so yeah, so it's synergy. It's poetry, it rhymes, like Lucas was saying in the prequels there, and that one. Poetry, it rhymes. Not so much the sequels. Not so much. The sequels had a virtue of never being tried. I kind of liked them. They were better than the prequels. Go back and watch the Star Wars prequels. They're not that good. They're just not. The third one is decent, and yeah, the first 2 of the new ones are decent, and the last one, although it goes there, it has issues that they should have fixed. That I did tell them not to do, but I did them anyway, because I wasn't in charge of anything. So like, don't do this, no. Palpatine, don't, yeah, keep her name ambiguous and all that. Keep her parents ambiguous and all that. We don't need to know that, because nothing you do will impress anybody. So they're like, how is she's a Palpatine? No. Well, whatever. We all know she's supposed to be a Kenobi originally, not a Palpatine. But yeah, we'll just change that. Yeah, well, that's Star Wars. Anyway, so that was my long, meandering review of Loki, finale, which doesn't really have much Loki finale. It's not really a Kal Kat story. It's elements of one, but that's more of a Doctor Who thing. If they didn't have free will to begin with, they addressed that, then they will. We'll have to spread the universe. Could get extremely convoluted, though. And time travel is a showstopper. If you have time travel, you have space-time travel, you have no way of knowing how the outcome would actually be, and it throws everything off. just a TVA necessary or whatever, and best thing, and actually, they kind of do the Terry Gilliam Brazil ending, if you think about it, because at the end of the Terry Gilliam version of Brazil, to remind you of Brazil, the Americanized version, they cut off the last 15 minutes of the movie and didn't show the end credits and said love conquers all and the rebels and he escape and all that other stuff you imagine, but he escapes with the rebel lady and they live happily ever after. But then there was 10 minutes more in the British version in which we pan back and he's actually like in the hospital on the planet in the city, and they're trying to get into his mind again, but they can't because they have trapped him again, but they can't get to him because he's in his fantasy and he's like grinning like, I'm in the fantasy, you can't get me. It's like lobotomized himself. In a sense, that is the ending of this story. Like they saw the American one and said, let's just reset the kind of the ending so that even Mobius doesn't recognize him. It'd be like he's in his mind, sort of. Yeah. Not realizing that the Terry Gilliam version actually does end with that. Yeah. So he's not in his mind, but it's in a sense in his mind because he's kind of started over. He's kind of wiped clean of his variants, and he's in this other realm. Yeah. So, but he's not in his mind. It's not an illusion. It's more like they're literally saying he traveled through time to another dimension where the other guy was in charge, but now technically Sylvie would be in charge. Which is interesting. Which in the beginning of the story they hint at when the little clock thing says send you somewhere where they will find you, or you've marked variants, or and then the other ones try to stop the guy and they do the other variant thing too as well, and they go to school. So it's like, did they actually follow the little clock thing without knowing it? And that was the outcome she wanted to begin with. It's the little clock thing, in fact, the god alien that's controlling everything. Of course. Yes, because Penny from Inspector Gadget would totally, if that's who that actress is, would she be controlling the entire universe? That'd be hilarious. Of course I would. Yes. Well, she's sounding a little long in the tooth because that was like 30 years ago. So now she's got to be pushing 60 something. She's not spring. There's not a spring chicken anymore. She's got to be pushing 60. Gotta be. Because that Inspector Gadget show was 1990 something, 30 years ago. So that's funny. The little Texas sounding clock thing, which they kind of cribbed from Jurassic Park with the little DNA thing talking, but that's okay. Also from Doctor Time Lord thing. It's a clock. Why would it look like a clock? An hourglass would be cooler. They did that on Deep Space Nine. They kept saying the orbs of the prophets. Every time they showed the Deep Space Nine orbs of the prophets, it looked like an hourglass. It never looked like a sphere. Yeah, it was odd. I saw the prop too. They had the prop. Well, a couple of the props at the Star Trek experience. And it was the prop that had been graffitied by several of the cast members, including the people that I encountered from the Limerick Church, including Brian. And then they wrote on it, and everyone else wrote on it. Brian. It said Ira for Ira Bear. It said Justman. It said a bunch of other people. Yeah, Ira Bear. Ron Moore. Ron was on there. Yeah. A little orb, which was an hourglass. Not an orb. Well, Loki. Okay. Loki.